Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're diving into what was an absolutely tense tactical chess match between Brazil and Japan. If you tuned in expecting just a standard, straightforward knockout game, well, you got a massive surprise. What we actually witnessed was this fascinating battle of tactical wits. We're talking high-risk pressing, massive mid-game pivots, and one completely fatal stoppage time error. So let's just get right into it.
Here is our match playbook for today. 1. Japan's pressing masterclass. 2. Breaking down Brazil's structure. 3. Flaws in Brazil's press. 4. The second half comeback. And 5. The decisive late mistake. Let's get to it.
Section 1. Japan's pressing masterclass and how the trap was set. Let's start with the massive, glaring problem Japan threw at Brazil in those opening minutes, basically neutralizing their entire game plan. For the first 5 minutes, Brazil literally could not play out from the back. But here's the thing, Japan didn't just run around blindly chasing the ball. They used this brilliant shape-shifting system that dynamically adjusted based on exactly how Brazil was trying to build up. This wasn't some rigid, static defense. It was highly coordinated, totally reactive, and designed to squeeze out maximum pressure without overcommitting. They fluidly alternated between a 5-2-3 and a 5-4-1. The trigger for this shift is actually super interesting. Basically, whenever Brazil dropped 4 or even 5 guys back into that first phase of possession, Japan realized, hey, we're outnumbered here. So they'd drop into a solid 5-4-1. There's no point pressing when it's 5-on-3, right? But the exact second Japan spotted a 3-3, total numerical equality, boom, they instantly sprang into an aggressive 5-2-3 press, pushing their wingbacks super high to choke out the space. And this relentless pressure totally worked, leading directly to Japan drawing first blood. We can track it step by step. Brazil wins the ball back. It goes wide to Danilo, who actually has some space to run, but instead he forces this really risky horizontal pass. Japan's trap instantly springs. They intercept, counter fast, and their agile attacker easily outpaces a pretty heavy-footed Casemiro before smashing a 22-meter strike right into the corner. Just a perfect example of high pressure translating into a goal.
Section 2. Breaking down Brazil's structure and attempting to escape. So how exactly did Brazil try to solve this incredibly frustrating puzzle and get out of the trap?
Well, they knew they couldn't keep falling right into Japan's hands, so they started moving pieces around the board in some pretty unconventional ways. They went with these constant positional rotations to try and scramble Japan's disciplined lines. The goal was to create numerical advantages, so you'd see the center forward dropping way deep into the midfield. We even saw Lucas Paqueta sliding all the way back into the left fullback spot just to get on the ball. Meanwhile, the attackers formed this diamond shape up top to overload the center. Honestly, it was a pretty desperate attempt just to find some kind of passing rhythm.
But there was a massive flaw in this strategy. Brazil would build these heavy, dense overloads on one side of the pitch, grouping a ton of players together for quick, short combinations. But in doing so, they completely ignored the other side of the field. Time and time again, you'd have a Brazilian winger just standing in acres of space on the far side, desperately waving for a long switch, and the pass almost never came. They did the hard part building the overload, but totally failed to exploit the massive gaps it opened up.
Section 3. Flaws in Brazil's press and the cover shadow. Now let's flip the script and see what happened when Japan had the ball.
While Brazil struggled to break Japan down, their own defensive pressing had this fatal flaw. To get this, we really need to understand a concept called a cover shadow. It's basically a pressing technique where a defender closes down the guy with the ball, but intentionally positions his body to block the passing lane to another player right behind him, keeping them in his shadow. Brazil pressed in a 4-4-2, and Vinicius Jr. was the main trigger here, relying heavily on this cover shadow to cut off Japan's holding midfielders.
The problem? Relying on a cover shadow is incredibly risky against a team that pings the ball around quickly. Japan just kept bypassing Vinicius with 1 or 2 snappy little passes. A Japanese midfielder would sneak right behind him, a quick combination would happen, and suddenly that midfielder has the ball with 0 marking. Combine that with a surprising lack of defensive hustle from Casemiro in the middle, and Japan was just calmly walking through Brazil's pressure over and over.
Section 4. The second half comeback and a major tactical shift. So, going into the second half, Brazil is down a goal, and they are clearly frustrated.
They finally realized their intricate little passes and slow, wide overloads were doing absolutely nothing against Japan's deep defensive block. It was time for a major pivot. First half, all about short combinations out wide that just bounced right off Japan's defense. Second half, they completely ditched the cute stuff. Instead, they just started launching crosses into the penalty area. It was gritty, it was direct, but guess what? It worked. Suddenly, they're creating massive chances and forcing desperate clearances.
And that gritty adjustment paid off big time. After a pretty rough defensive showing earlier in the match, Casemiro completely redeems himself. He finds a pocket of space at the back post and just powers home a header from one of those exact deep crosses. The tactical shift worked, leveling the playing field.
Section 5. The decisive late mistake and stoppage time drama. Okay, this is where the explainer reaches its climax. Deep into stoppage time, a game that was entirely about complex tactical systems is decided by one tiny individual error. Let's walk through this frantic buildup. A quick combination down the flank breaks down, and Brazil loses the ball in midfield. At first, Japan has possession and a totally clear chance to just boot it away. But instead of clearing it, the Japanese player hesitates for like a split second too long. Two Brazilian players instantly activate an aggressive counterpress, winning the ball right back in a super dangerous spot. The ball falls straight to Bruno Guimaraes, hovering right on the edge of the box.
As Guimaraes looks up, it's almost like time stops. The entire outcome of this match hinges on this one inexplicable decision by the Japanese defense. The question that will honestly haunt Japanese fans is, why on earth did the right wing-back step away?
Here is the fatal error in detail. Instead of squeezing the passing lane to Gabriel Martinelli, who is standing in the single most dangerous spot on the pitch, the wingback actually takes a couple of steps backwards, away from him. He shifts his attention out towards Vinicius Jr., who is way out wide and hardly a threat from there. By stepping out to cover the less dangerous guy, he totally fails to narrow that crucial lane, leaving Martinelli completely unmarked inside the penalty box.
You literally cannot give a player of Gabriel Martinelli's caliber that kind of real estate and stoppage time. He receives the pass under absolutely zero pressure and with total calm slots it into the far corner. Just like that, game over. The comeback is complete.
And man, that is just the harsh reality of knockout football, isn't it? On one side, Brazil survives. They advance after a pretty flawed performance where they really struggled with their structure, but they showed the resilience to adapt when it mattered. Japan, on the other hand, they go home early. They were incredibly impressive, tactically fluid, and honestly the better team for long stretches, but they are eliminated entirely due to fine margins.
So Brazil moves on, likely facing Norway next in what should be a totally different tactical challenge. And that wraps up our tactical breakdown for today's explainer. We've seen the traps, the structural flaws, and the ultimate escape. But what do you guys think? Can this resilient but clearly flawed Brazilian squad fix these issues and go all the way? Let me know your thoughts and keep learning.